the Orlando Magic are not as far away from advancing out of the first round, from getting to the conference finals as you might think. And we got a Celtics fan, a Celtics writer, a Celtics person to tell us why today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 9th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can always find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to finally put a bow on the Magic series with the Boston Celtics, essentially end any talk of that series exclusively by chatting with our friend Keith Smith of Spotrac. He is both an Orlando resident, Central Florida resident, follows the Magic, but is at his heart a Celtics fan and Celtics writer. So he's going to give us the Celtics perspective on what he saw from the Magic and where the Magic go next, why they aren't as far away as you think. And we'll actually dive into some more of their offseason. Little bits of it today. Most of it will come on Monday. We're going to get to that conversation coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen every day. We do appreciate all of our everydayers who make Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You guys are the best. You should join that club too. Make Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I don't want to tarry too much. This was a really fun conversation I had with Keith Smith on Thursday morning, or Thursday afternoon, I should say. Did a great job kind of doing an all-encompassing look on the Orlando Magic. This conversation is going to be split into two parts. Part one today is going to talk about what we learned from the series with the Boston Celtics. So we're going to get into a lot of what happened in the series with the Celtics, what the Magic proved, what the Magic showed, and yes, the deficiencies they still have on their roster. Monday, we're going to talk about what's in store for the Magic's offseason, how close the Magic are to competing, and we're getting to that a little bit today as well, how close the Magic are to competing for something bigger and what's at stake during this offseason. So we got an all-encompassing conversation coming up for the next 2 days. So let's dive right into it with Keith Smith of Spotrac. And I'm joined now by our good friend from Spotrac, Keith Smith. We will not hold against you that you are a Boston Celtics fan, but that's actually one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. But Keith, before we get started, how you doing? How you doing, man? Always great to see you. It's not usually happy to see you because it means the Magic season is over and we're getting ready for the off season. But Keith, how you doing, man?
No, I'm good. Yeah, it's it's funny in the wake of things, and I had some Magic fans get mad and then actually come back and be like, yeah, actually, a couple days after the series ended, they're like, this is kind of true. I was like, all things considered, the Magic had a really good season. Like, because if you told me, hey, you're going to miss Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner for large chunks of the season, and those chunks are going to overlap. Oh, and when they come back, Jalen Suggs is going to go out for the rest of the year. It would have been like, cool. Where are we picking in the lottery? What are our lottery odds? Like the fact that I think it's a testament to the guys and the coach and everything that they built. They never gave up. They fought all the way through. And then they challenged and pushed Boston. The last game, whatever. It's any closeout game.
It's a closeout game.
Yeah, you let go of the rope.
I know I warned my audience plenty. Like, look,
yeah,
even the teams that try their butts off, there is a moment when Cancun is right around the corner. It happens to all of us in our professions where it's just like, I'm on vacation in 3 hours. What do I really care?
Yeah.
That happens to everybody.
This thing I'm very fond of is you get them thinking about, all right, I'm taking a flight somewhere. Where do I want to take that flight? And that's why jump on them early, right? If you can jump on a team, get them down early, kind of get them like, yeah, I don't really want to go back there again just to lose or whatever. Like, you're not going to go. But and I'm not going to criticize that. I thought they played really well. And I thought probably the biggest takeaway for me is Paolo Banchero is the guy. Like, he is that guy. Franz Wagner is a really good number 2. Now it's everything else, right? Now, and I'm preaching to the choir, right? Like, everybody's yeah, sure, we've known. But, like, you saw it in a playoff setting against the defending champions. That's a little bit different than well, we were in the play-in tournament and we looked really good, or we, did that. Like they showed up. And then that's really important to me. Those are the things, that's what you build on now moving forward.
Yeah, and I made this my point coming into the series. I know Magic, entering a series, you want to believe you're going to win. And look,
Mm-hmm.
I thought the Magic would be competitive like they were. I had it as a hard 5. I don't know how you view series, but like usually what I view series as, like, this is a soft 5. It's like they'll probably win a game, but it's 4 verging on 5.
The
I saw
classic
this,
gentleman sweep,
yeah,
right?
gentleman sweep, where it's just like, oh, they had their one shot and they missed it.
Yeah.
I saw this series pretty much going exactly how it went. It was a hard 5. I knew the Magic were going to get one. I was very, very confident the Magic were going to get one. And then we'd have a game like game 4 where it was, up in the air. That would determine whether this went 6 or not. And Boston won game 4. Obviously, they showed their mettle, their toughness in that setting. And I don't want to verge on. We're gonna halt everything at game 5 for the moment. I don't think we need to dive too much into into what's happened since. But you mentioned like, we're going to get into like how close the Magic are really, but you mentioned like just getting to this point, being down, not just Paolo and Franz. The Magic lost their 4 top scorers at the end of the season. Their 4 top scorers for the season by points per game all missed at least 20 games. They missed a bunch of time. There's like a 2-3 week period where they were all out.
Yeah.
All out. I don't think, like, yes, everyone seemed very disappointed to be the 7 seed, be out in the first round, but it definitely felt like there was a lot of this sense of accomplishment. Like, most teams, they don't do this. They don't get to 41-41. I know people hate me for saying this, but like the way the Magic finished the season at 12-6, to get to 41-41, to have a winning season or a 500 season, I don't know how people define winning seasons anymore. But to get to that point, I do think was a real testament to how this team is built, the culture that they've built, and the direction that they're going in. But obviously there are still things to fix, and we're going to get to that later in the conversation. Let's start with this series. Like I agree with you. Being the 7 seed going up against Boston, the goal to win was going to be very, very long. Like, you obviously want to win. I felt like the Magic could be competitive in the series, but I agree with you. Ultimately, what I wanted to see was Paolo Banchero confirm what he did in the series against Cleveland, and Franz, who was very up and down last year against the Cavs, be a little bit more even and show what they can do, what they can do. How, you watch the Celtics. I don't know if you still write about the Celtics, but you watch the Celtics. What did you see in Paolo and Franz from this series? You mentioned Paolo is the dude already. What did you see from them in this series that projects forward and makes them a threat to a team like Boston moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's the versatility in their offensive games. Speaking specifically to Paolo and Franz, they can both shoot some, right? I know Franz still, like, we got to figure that out.
The mid-range shot is there.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I don't want to delve too deep into that because it's not what we're really doing here today, but like, whenever he has less time, it looks better. Like, it's just like, I don't know if he's in his head with his release. There's a lot of moving parts in there when he has a lot of time. And you could tell almost by the end of the series, Boston was like, shoot, spot up. So we're going to give them to you. What we're going to do is we're not going to let you drive into us and pull up jump shots from the mid-range. So that's something they got to figure out. But I think equally as important, sometimes guys show up and it's like, man, this guy, all right, he's a playoff level scorer, but he gives them all back on the other end. They don't, right? They were really good. I thought both of them held up really well defensively against really tough matchups. You're a lot of the time they were the two checking Tatum and Brown, and that's not easy, right? Those are not easy. And then even when the Magic would be like, all right, we're going to put Paolo on one of the bigs, the Celtics bigs ask you to do a lot of different things, right? You got to cover him in the roll, you got to cover him out to the arc, and he held up really well in that. And I think there's the next kind of level for him is unlocking, like, being better as a help defender. Where I think he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's certainly smart enough where it's like, hey, make that extra push to get across the lane to be there to challenge as the second guy at the rim versus like, all right, I'm going to hang out on this side. I've harped on it for a while. I want to see him rebound more. Like he is so good when he rips and runs, and that's just a way you can unlock a lot of stuff. And these are nitpicky things to some extent, but that's where we're at with Paolo, right? We're going to nitpick because all the big stuff is already there. Like you can see all of it. Franz, I thought held up very well defensively, as I said too. They went at him a lot in isolation, and it's a little bit of the let's isolate the European white guy and attack him, theory that's been around forever.
Franz, I think, is going to be an all-defensive team player at some point in one year in his career. It's maybe it's when Jalen Suggs leaves the team. Like we all kind of sense Jalen Suggs is sort of the Marcus Smart of the team.
Oh yeah.
Like he'll be the guy that unlocks the last piece to get them over the hump, like sort of like Porzingis did, and obviously Drew Holiday came after.
Yep.
But like Franz Wagner's really good on defense.
Yeah, and then if we expand away from those two guys, the other lessons were just more confirmation of need more playmaking, need more shooting. I mean, the shooting thing we all know, but for me, it really stood out the lack of playmaking. And I think if you can get to a world with the Magic, and I don't know if they can, I don't want to step too far on what should they do this summer yet, but we'll get there. We may be in a spot where to get to be the best version of what they want to be, it may not involve Paolo, Franz, and Jalen all together. One of them may have to go, right? And that's just part of it. You just mentioned for the Celtics to get to be the best version they could be, Marcus Smart had to go. Like that was just part of it, right? It's eventually you're going to hit those points. But with those guys, I think what you can kind of look at and see a little bit here is Jalen Suggs would help with that. If you can get to a world where Jalen Suggs is your third best, fourth best, ideally creator, you're probably really, really good because that's a role he's overqualified for. If you're asking him to step in and be like, hey, you have to be the guy who can really make life easier for Paolo and Franz every night, night in, night out, and especially in the playoffs, he's probably a little bit underqualified for that. He's probably somewhere in the middle, right? And that's not the end of the world. And then the other weird thing I think some people would challenge a little bit is I don't know where they're going at the big man position, but none of it was really good enough. Like it just felt like every night other than getting on the offensive glass on occasion, what were they really offering? They weren't. Jonathan Isaac didn't look like himself defensively. Wendell Carter Jr. couldn't make a shot outside of the paint.
Nope.
Goga Bitadze barely played, so I'm not going to put too much on him. And that really turned into, for me, now the fully solidifying thing for me was Paolo and Franz are the guys. We'll kind of put Suggs over here because he was out. We'll kind of leave him as his own separate thing. And everybody else, I can't be too precious anymore. And this sounds super harsh, and I don't mean it this way. I no longer care that we have been through all of this with Jonathan Isaac. We went through all of it. You paid him another contract, a third contract. He is now taken care of. The best thing to do is trade him. Like we don't need to be like, man, we worked so hard to get this guy back on the court. We got to hang on. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, if their decision is the best thing to do to get help is to move him, all right, so be it. Then that's what it is. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where it's like, man, this guy just signed here as a free agent. You moved him a year later. It kind of is what it is. I mean, and then his comments of like, look, I wanted to go back to Denver. And then I wanted to go to, was it Dallas maybe?
Dallas, yeah.
Like that says to me like, okay, like clearly we maybe weren't your first option. So I think everybody there is grown-ups. They all know what the situations are. You just can't be precious with the rest of the guys anymore around Paolo and Franz because you really have to be like, what you don't want to do is, I don't want to be having a conversation with you 3 off seasons from now about why they need to trade Paolo and Franz because they never got there. Yeah. Right. Because they waited too long for other guys.
I want to get to like more specifics of the offseason toward the end of the conversation, but sure. It is time to be ruthless and judging by, and like, you followed this Magic team since Jeff Wiltman's been the executive. He never talks like he talked at exit interviews when he was 100%. It's time to start making some win now moves. It's time to push some chips into the center. It's time. Like because the Magic know Paolo and Franz are those dudes. And that's, again, I think the biggest takeaway from the playoff series with Boston is Paolo and Franz are it. Like the Magic have not, I mentioned this on my pod yesterday, the Magic have not had two all-NBA talent players on their roster since T-Mac and Grant Hill didn't play, and Shaq and Penny before that. Like this is a once in 30 years, once in 25 years thing that's happened in this Magic franchise. They cannot mess it up.
Yep.
I want to talk more about the comparison between Paolo and Franz and what the Magic's defense showed in how they defended Boston and why maybe it's still, I don't want to bring too much up from games 1 and 2, but might still be affecting Boston a little bit. I want to get to that coming up here in just a moment. Let's take a quick break from our conversation. Tell you a quick word from our friends over at DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. Look, we all need that pick-me-up because we're staying up late watching these games, or that pick-me-up to get you through the game itself. Because all we know is that we need to be well-fed, well locked in for the end of these games because, oh boy, they have been crazy. Well, DoorDash has you set up with the best meals, best food in your city. And with Dash Pass, you get $0 delivery fees and exclusive perks like this one, this Wingstop 50 deal. How much could you save over a season? So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 or more in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order and code WINGSTOP50. That's Dash Pass. Your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. I'm joined once again by Keith Smith of Spotrac. He is Orlando resident, not Orlando native.
Yeah.
There are so few Orlando natives. I am one of them. He's an honorary Orlando native.
Yeah, you're like the fourth one I've ever met. So
he is an Orlando resident. He's covered the Boston Celtics. He's a Celtics fan. So I want to get his perspective on the Magic since he follows the Magic, but also it comes from things from the Celtics perspective. Entering, we've talked a lot about Paolo and Franz. I don't want to belabor the point too much because they're like, we know what I think, like the Magic kind of know what they have in them at this point. Yes, there are ways that they'll continue to get better. They're 22 and 23 years old. They're not near their prime yet. But entering this series, there's obviously been a lot of talk on how the Magic are building their team with two kind of wing creators in Paolo and Franz. And everyone likes to compare them to, they're building like a jumbo-sized Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, obviously, the way Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were brought up were a little bit different. They kind of started as rookies on more veteran teams with that had championship aspirations. They've been in the conference finals, and deep in the playoffs over and over again. But what similarities is it? Just like is the comparison just simple because it's of a type, or what similarities do you see in the way Paolo and Franz are developing to the way that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown developed to turn into a championship core?
Yeah, I like the comp, and there's a lot of things that make it kind of easy, right? It's two wings on both sides with pretty good size, right? They can really play any position between 2 and 4, and you're probably okay. They can really guard, especially like Tatum and Paolo. They can guard 2 through 5. And hold their own in switches against just about most point guards. The very quickest point guards are going to get both of them. But that's what happens. I think then you obviously have Tatum and Paolo, both Duke guys. So that's what makes it easy there. Franz and Jaylen are both number twos, and I think most people, you're always going to have in the fan base, somebody's going to be like, actually, I think this guy's the better player. But I think most people would agree they're number twos with what would it look like if they had their own team and they were a number one? Where would you go? Where would we go with that? That question's been there forever. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of good apt points there in some respects. I think Paolo and Franz are ahead of Tatum and Brown. They're both better playmakers already than Tatum and Brown ever were at the same ages. Brown wasn't a passer at all, and Tatum was not a good passer. There was just a lot of nuance he needed to learn. A lot of things he needed
to learn. And he got there this year. And he got there this year, you know, in the regular season at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now Tatum and Brown they're pretty good playmakers. They, most times make the right read. Sometimes they make really surprising reads where it's like, whoa, I didn't know they'd see that. So that's really encouraging for the Magic of, all right, these guys can get there. And then I think the other thing is if we go from Tatum's rookie season, right, and he came in 1 year behind, much like Paolo did. He came in that rookie year there was questions of, is this kid even going to start as the number 3 pick? Because that team had Gordon Hayward and Al Horford and Kyrie Irving. And it was like, all right, they're going to go with this. 5 minutes in opening night, Gordon Hayward gets hurt. Then it's like, all right, well, Tatum's now in here. He's going to be in here. And from that moment forward, other than one season when Jaylen Brown was out and Jason Tatum was kind of playing by himself down the stretch, and they were a bad team. They were a playing team that got bounced in the first round by the Nets. They've played really competitive basketball on very deep playoff runs, won a title and all that. But that started for them basically day one with that group. Like Tatum as a rookie, I have the clip saved permanently to my desktop. He dunked on LeBron and went chest to chest with him. It probably wasn't the smartest thing because then LeBron proceeded to rip their hearts out over the final 6-7 minutes of the game, as he is apt to do. But like it was like this was the kid like there dunked on him and was like, I'm gonna let you know, like I'm here. Like that was a cool moment in the Eastern Conference Finals. That's but the difference is they had all those really good players around them early. The Magic are building from a different spot, right? It was we don't have all the guys right around
scratch,
now.
Essentially.
Yeah, now we're having to go, which is in one retrospect, you could say that makes it harder on Paolo and Franz because they don't have that help around them. They don't have guys to show them along. But on the other side, they didn't walk right into a team that's trying to win a title. It immediately be, hey, you can't not be productive. You have to be really good. So I think it's an interesting comparison point there. I just think, now for the Magic, it's how do we get deeper playoff runs, get that experience, move them forward. I think that's where we're more headed with this. And then, yeah, I mean, defensively, like you said, they hold up, right? And not more than hold up. They're good, right? And that's huge because that's, you just don't win with a lot of one-way players, especially one-way players that aren't, elite, on the offensive end. If you can't defend it all in the playoffs, it almost doesn't matter how good you are offensively. It's going to become a problem at one point or another.
Yeah, and I think obviously like so much for this Magic team has been centered on defense, and a lot of this offseason is probably seeking balance. Like,
sure.
you not to bring up the Knicks, but the Knicks are what, 5th, 6th in the league in offensive rating, 13th in defensive rating, but they're, they have the reserves. Like they're good enough. Their offense is good enough to give their defense a chance. And when their defense is good, their offense takes advantage of that chance. And I don't know how you felt, but I felt in each of the 5 games of the series with Boston, except for maybe game 4. Game 4 might be the one exception because that was just a nip and tuck battle the whole way. It always felt like the Magic would have these 2 or 3 minute stretches where the defense would just kind of buckle. And Boston would kind of like water finding a hole, would just rush in and fill that hole. And then the Magic would kind of straighten themselves back up. And all of a sudden Orlando's down 8-9 points, and they don't, they're certainly not in the playoffs had the firepower to, they'd make up those 8-9 points. But if they're down 12, 15, they no longer had the firepower to come back, like, again, not to bring up the series too much, but the Magic go down 20. They're not coming back. Like they're not
sure.
The Knicks can come back from a 20-point deficit against any defense. The Magic don't have that ability. And so much of this offseason is about kind of finding that balance and figuring out how much of the defense that they can sacrifice. Let's take another break from our conversation with Keith Smith to tell you a quick word about our friends from Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribers sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Fire TV, you get the latest technology for elevated playing with Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology. Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. If gaming's not for you, there's endless entertainment with the Amazon Fire TV Stick. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorites, subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen today. But obviously, like, credit to Jamal Mosley for building this defensive mentality in this team and being fifth last year, second this season. Before we kind of move on to bigger picture stuff, what did the Magic do defensively that seemed to bother Boston so much and seemed to like kind of throw them a little bit off their game?
Yeah, I think what they did was they aggressively switched. They were very much, and you could see it as the series went along. Cole Anthony didn't play as much in some of the games. It was, if you can't guard your yard, you're not going to play. They were just not going to have you on the floor. There were moments where like Gary Harris was getting run despite doing almost nothing offensively, but it was because he was competing.
His defense was just so good.
End. Yeah, he was really locked in and playing well. There was games where Anthony Black, even when the Celtics were like, hey, we're going to guard you from somewhere in the back, like by the popcorn vendor, like he stayed on the floor because he was competing defensively. And that was huge. And I think that switching style, staying hugged up on the Celtics as shooters really made Boston uncomfortable. We can get into the whole physicality of it all. And I think the Magic did walk the line of it. And I think it was very intentional. I think that was what they wanted to do. There was only one play that I had any issue with that I thought was even even questionable. They called it a flagrant. Was when Kentavious Caldwell-Pope gave the foul on Jaylen Brown and then pulled him down.
And he was late. And he was late on that play.
Yeah.
He made a play on, like, I think he made a play on the ball, but he was way late. It was way past time. The only other play I would mention is Goga Bitadze. His only defense was just straight shoving people in game 5.
Yeah. I mean, Celtics have a couple guys who do that too. So that one I'm not going to really, worry about too much. And the one where he cracked Porzingis in the head, that was just that.
Yeah, that was just bad.
There's nothing. That's just a play that happened, and it was unfortunate. Even the one where Caldwell-Pope, and Carter came together on Tatum, I didn't think it was a dirty play. So that time, Celtics fans, were really mad with me. Probably still are. But it is,
Cole reaching in and grabbing Jaylen Brown's elbow to stop a layup attempt, like that was clearly flagrant. Again, he was late, so like a lot of these flagrant fouls are because the Magic are late on defense or not where they need to be defensively.
But also,
that's a playoff foul. You expect that.
Sure. And it was also very telling to me too. Playoffs, you got a lot of times one game in one window. And so everybody's watching. And it was very telling to me. A lot of people they didn't watch the Magic this year because they didn't defend all that differently than the way they do in the regular season. I'm not going to say in a random Tuesday night game in Charlotte in January that they were bringing this much physicality, but it was it reminded me of some of the games and series I grew up on, which was the Knicks and Pistons were we're going to foul Michael Jordan 100 times. They're not going to call 100 fouls. Like we're just, we'll get away with some of them. And I think that was part of it, but that's how they play. They're super physical. Their whole thing is they can grind you down to a point where you quit and give up on the things you want to do. They're going to get you. Now, where they got in trouble, I think with the Celtics was when the Celtics finally really settled in, they weren't, well, let's try to hunt Cole Anthony. Let's try to hunt this guy. It became, let's isolate the bigs and let's go buy them. And they just didn't, Jonathan Isaac he doesn't move the way he did.
And he admitted that.
Yeah.
Like he's admitted that. Like I thought Wendell Carter did about as well as you could, and his 100%. Ability to switch on to Jaylen Brown was like the linchpin of what they're trying to do defensively. If that didn't work, none of it worked.
Yeah.
And Brown, Brown got him, 2 out of every 3 times, or like if they were going at each other 5 times, it was 3 out of 5, and that's enough. That's enough to convert.
And that's where I think if you're Jamal Mosley now, it's very hard to change who you are, especially defensively. It's very hard to change your complete identity in the middle of a playoff series. It was very funny. It was either game 4 or 5. I think it was 4. They started doubling, and you could see him on the side. He's losing his mind. He's like, what are we doing? We don't do this. And on one of them, it was Paolo came with a double on Drew Holiday, where he's about 15 feet out on the baseline. And he came with a double team, and the Celtics, then they had him in the blender. It ended up, I think it was Derek White ended up with an open 3, and he hit it. And Jamal Mosley immediately called timeout, and he laid in Apollo. And it was, why are you done? Even if your decision was okay, nobody else was prepared for it, and it just put us all in a bad spot. And you could tell, like, it's just, that's not what we do. So now I think, hindsight's 2020, you go back and watch. Where you tweak now is like, all right, we have this 6'10" dude who's super athletic and can do stuff. Maybe we can use him in a little bit of a different way. If they're attacking some of these things, put him in a spot where let's have him somewhere he can be a little bit better of a helper. They defend very straight up. It's guards on guards, wings on wings, bigs on bigs. Maybe you do work in. Let's pre-switch this. Let's put Banchero on Holiday if Holiday's going to guard Banchero on the other end, and then we're pre-switched, right? And now he can come over and help. And those are all things they'll figure out, as a staff and as a team. Yeah. And I think you'll see them tweak their defensive approach a little bit. But that's what the playoffs are for, right? You're learning lessons. And they learned them against, doesn't look like it over the last couple of games. They learned them against one of the better offenses in the league. To learn those things against, and it's, hey, I think you kind of, all right, these things worked, these things didn't. We file away what we think we can do different. We try it and experiment it on those Tuesday nights in January in Charlotte when we're probably popping a bad Hornets team anyway. Let's try some double teaming. Let's try some stuff. Let's try some 2 on the ball coming out of a pick and roll instead of a straight switch, and try some different stuff and see what it looks like.
And to that point, like, the Magic were so injured, they probably couldn't experiment with a lot of that stuff because they were just working so hard to get back to a baseline and kind of get back to, this is what we were before Paolo got hurt in October. And like, again, the most successful string for the Magic this season was the last 18 games after the All-Star break. They went 12-6, and it was the time when their lineup was the most stable. Like they put Corey Joseph in the starting lineup, and they found some stability in rotations, and that mattered. The other part of it too, I think with the defense, the Magic, because their offense just cannot score, like their offense was just so inconsistent. The Magic, I think, probably feared the Celtics 3-point shooting far more than like the Knicks would. Like the Knicks are fine letting the Celtics shoot 43s and shoot 63s in a game like that. Like they can survive that because they can not necessarily match, but as long as they're, look, if Boston shoots their regular percentages in either of these games, like it's a 2-0 Celtics series. I think that's how Boston...
it's a 2-0 with 2 blowouts.
Exactly.
As I put it this morning, they merely shot poorly instead of absolutely god.
Instead of like the Magic.
They win.
You could say it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is true. Well, I think too, I'll say this with the Magic. Yeah. You have to defend that way because to your point, if you get buried in the avalanche of threes, you are done. You do not have the offensive capability where the Knicks are like, okay, we'll come back. Like we have offense of our own. Like we'll try to shut this off a little bit and we'll come back. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's personnel based. I think where kind of going with this. One thing that I would caution, not this Knicks team. Let's go back a couple years. Old friend Evan Fournier leaves the Celtics for the Knicks. That Knicks team that year before Fournier signed was awesome defensively, was so good defensively. And they said, but we got to add offense. They signed Fournier, and what happened was they took a little improvement offensively and a major downgrade defensively. And that's one thing where, because we're going to get into it more, it's going to be Magic need more offense. They need more shooting. They need more creation. But you don't want to go so far trying to find that where you remove what makes you special. Because then all of a sudden it's like, how we did all this and we're a 44 win team and we're still out in 5 in the first round. Like what? Because yeah, I mean, you improved the offense from, I don't know where they finished the year, 27th or whatever.
28th, yeah.
Yeah. You're 22nd or 20th now. But the defense went from 2nd to 10th or 11th. If that happens, that's probably not enough of an offset to really get you where you want to be. Easier said than done, of course, right? It's going to be very hard to maintain the second-rated defense while improving the offense, but that's going to be the give and take where they've got to figure that out.
Yeah, and that's obviously, I think, the next place we have to go. Let's talk about how close the Magic are really and the challenges they face as they begin to weigh what happens this offseason. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. I want to thank Keith once again for coming on the show, giving us his perspective on the Magic Celtics series, what we learned about the Magic and how this team moves forward. He will be back on the show Monday for the second half of our conversation, where we talk a little bit more in depth about which direction the Magic need to head this offseason, what they need to do, the limitations they're now working under the luxury tax and first apron, and how the Magic will manage this summer. Plus, he does make a bold claim about what Jeff Weltman's going to do that I am sure will make Magic fans very, very happy. We'll get to all that on Monday, but I want to wish everyone a great weekend. You can, of course, follow Keith Smith on his socials at Keith Smith NBA. Be sure to check out not only his work at Spotrac, he hasn't gotten to his Magic offseason outlook quite yet. They're doing it in reverse order of elimination, so the Magic are getting there pretty soon, but they're still a little ways away. You can also check him on the Front Office Show podcast. They do a Friday mailbag, essentially a Friday live mailbag. You can get in with them, ask him. He's the cap expert. All the questions you have about this offseason. Again, we'll chat a little bit more about that on Monday's episode. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD, as well as on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them you download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on, you can also check us out on YouTube as well. Almost to 4,000 subscribers. Who's going to be number 4,000? Tell your friends, subscribe to Locked On Magic if they are not all doing so already. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub. I'm doing my What Went Right, What Went Wrong series there. I'll be doing player evaluations on there. You can check that out again at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned, get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA or on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Have a great weekend. We will see you all Monday for the second half of my conversation with Keith Smith of Spotrac and a little bit more into the future of the Orlando Magic. Until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.